This is probably a combination of action and, some of the elements from Hitman. It's probably the most complex game we've done.
James Bond, Indiana Jones, Lara Croft, Nathan Drake. Each of these iconic globetrotters was inspired by the one created before them. Now, that pattern comes full circle, with IO Interactive's 007 First Light channeling the action movie spirit of Naughty Dog's Uncharted series. But that circle forms a coin, much like the one IOI's other iconic leading man keeps in his pocket, with two distinct sides. Agent 47's DNA runs deep in the developer's new James Bond origin story, to the point that if the charismatic British spy himself sported a barcode on the back of his head, you'd likely scan it and find out he'd been engineered on the same production line. From what I've seen of 007 First Light so far, and from talking to the team at IOI, it's set to be an exciting blend of Hitman's signature do-it-yourself gameplay and a brand of cinematic spectacle you'd hope for from one of film's most enduring series.
You were warned.
First Light is all about earning that famous number, 007. But before the number, there's a name, James Bond. And behind that name lies another, Patrick Gibson. Casting for Britain's most famous spy is always a hot topic, but the 30-year-old Gibson instantly looks and sounds the part, stepping into the shoes of the youngest Bond ever put to screen.
I'll flank them. We need to keep that plane on the ground.
Well, what are we waiting for?
At 26, this version of Ian Fleming's iconic hero is already confident and charming, but with a dash of brashness.
Wonder if you could help me.
I'll certainly try, sir.
A wrinkle of immaturity that's not yet been ironed out. This isn't the experienced steely Bond that Daniel Craig most recently gave us, but one very much at the start of his career.
Ken Banks, penetration tester. I need to have a stern word with your manager.
Good to have you on the team.
First and foremost, this is the story of a young man that steps into a new world. Like, he steps into this world of shadows and of his future, really, right? So it's meeting someone who has a brighter outlook on life, who's more positive, who's a more relatable young man. And as the audience, we know a lot more about what he'll have to face in his future. And so we've built up a plot, an adventure that he has to go through that, will mature him and take him some of the way towards the guy that we know, the seasoned 007.
Thank you for your visit.
Okay.
We hope to see you again.
Somehow I doubt that.
First Light is a story made for the times we live in, a phrase repeated throughout my visit to the Copenhagen studio by IOI's CEO and First Light's game director, Hakan Abrak. Not only is it the first time an official Bond story has had James working in service of both king and country, but it's a tale that explores both the positive and negative effects of modern technology. You'll learn all about how this benefits his arsenal of gadgets later, but for now, let's focus on its threat to the world IO has built.
It's the zeitgeist right now, right? Like, thinking about how is that going to impact our lives? How is that going to impact our security or whatnot, right? So there are some of these things I think that are very, very interesting, and some of these things we are exploring in the story. Well, AI is certainly a part of the story, the information, what can you trust? And, when you're making a game about espionage and agencies working in the shadows, obviously these things, with the technological leaps we are living in or experiencing, there's a lot of material there to work on.
Just as we're living in a world still getting to grips with the impact of artificial intelligence, First Light's Bond is a young man still finding his feet as an agent, and indeed ticking off many firsts of his own. IOI teased that this may well be where we see him first sip his first shaken but not stirred martini, and perhaps even the first time he's had to take a life. But as synonymous with alcohol and violence as he is, he's also famed for the attention he garners from the women in his life.
A woman?
In terms of firsts in that department, well, IOI confirms that such a lifestyle is well and truly underway.
I think it would be weirdly cool to say, well, this guy is, he's celibate and he's a very charming mid to late 20s guy. Obviously, yes, he has experience with the opposite sex for sure. That said, so he has this easy charm. I'm not sure he's necessarily super aware of it though. Like, it's not weaponized in the way that it is for an older Bond that will use this for manipulation or to further his goals. Like, in that way, he's a lot more like a regular bloke.
And you are?
Rob Minkley. Sorry for the wait.
Regular blokes don't tend to disguise themselves as chauffeurs in order to break into chess tournaments taking place at Slovakian chateaus as part of a mission to track down rogue colleagues though. This is the setup for a very early task that establishes Bond's mission to bring in the traitorous 009, and follows a tutorial at an MI6 training facility and a prologue mysteriously titled The Iceland Incident. This demonstration level, which you can see play out in the most recent State of Play broadcast, shows us the two distinct sides to First Light's gameplay cadence. In a story of firsts for the agent in training, some aspects, especially in this demo's opening half, will be familiar to those experienced in IO's masterful world of assassination.
It doesn't necessarily walk around with coins and throw them. Bond is a lot more impulsive. You know, there might be things around him. It's a much more front-footed experience. He might, just grab something to use for distraction. Bond is more expressive, more charming, or in that way. So he, maybe he can whisper something to distract the enemies to a certain place that he wants them to go to.
When denied entry to the chateau, such a possibility may present itself, as there are a number of different opportunities hidden around for you to uncover. I'm shown an example where Bond sneaks past some guards in order to steal a lighter. He uses it to set some nearby leaves on fire, creating a distraction which relocates a nearby guard, allowing James to clamber up to an open window unseen. Another way, I'm told, would be to simply pickpocket an invitation from a guest.
Let's see. What is...
But there's several different routes to do that, and each route there's several different ways to do that. Whether you want to use your gadgetry or fisticuffs, or you want stealth, or use your instincts and your charm to get to where you want to go. This is probably a combination of action and some of the elements from Hitman. It's probably the most complex game we've done.
Of course, for all of its incredibly intelligent systemic and level design, Hitman has always been very silly. That tone translates directly into Bond. These two series share a love of quippy one-liners and an abundance of comical deaths.
Bye, Dad.
Oh, shoot! Oh my god! Is there anyone who can help? Please!
Albeit with James delivering them with a much more knowing wink, seemingly always playing to an audience.
I need to find Saunders. There's a chance the suspect is dressed as security. The bastard could be hiding right under your noses.
Rather than 47's bone-dry wit. And where IO's assassin always goes unseen, Bond can't help but draw attention. Everyone's glance lingers a couple of seconds longer than standard as he passes. But while the two agents have differing approaches, both provide fuel for comedy. As Bond makes his way through the aforementioned Slovakian chateau, maids mutter about how they'd love to leave a second mint on his pillow.
Which room is he in? Dunno. But he's getting an extra mint on his pillow.
And a smarmy man comments on his appearance, misidentifying him as a famous model.
How do you do? Where have I seen him before?
I think he models for Alexander Dupin.
James will occasionally fire back too, using his tongue to get himself out of precarious situations.
We did that with Agent 47, obviously, but he's the Grim Reaper. He doesn't say a lot. It's refreshing to write someone like Bond after having worked on Agent 47.
What? Excuse me? Who are you looking for?
Relax, off-duty museum security.
Don't.
This newfound license to pun can also lead to some excruciating, yet I concede still funny moments. When posing as a journalist searching for his lost camera, James utters the line,
Photography can be such a negative experience.
If he weren't so charming, you'd roll your eyes so hard you'd sever your optic nerve. This personable nature also directly feeds into gameplay, and how disguises play less of an essential part in 007 First Light compared to Hitman. Bond has no problem walking up to a stranger and declaring who he is so that he may disarm through charm, and so you can avoid confrontation by bluffing guards. This costs focus, a resource that depletes a yellow meter on the right of the screen. It's a powerful and costly skill that should be used sparingly, but focus can be refilled by completing certain tasks, such as containing a violent situation by taking out everyone you've accidentally aggravated. Two other resources, battery and chemicals, can be found on the face of your Omega wristwatch, located at the bottom left of the UI. These power your gadgets, a collection of which James steadily accumulates across the campaign, as well as the compulsory Q watch itself. The timekeeping device is so much more than just that though, with a plethora of abilities held in its hands. These include being able to scan the environment for conversations to eavesdrop on, and the corresponding opportunities that unlock from listening to them, as well as being able to remotely hack electronics in order to cause distractions or explosions. It truly takes the watch from Watch Dogs in this regard. Then there are the optional gadgets, of which you can take 3 into the field with you. These range from standard stealth fare, such as smoke bombs that aid in a quick escape, to much more high-tech tools, like a handy laser that can help you get up to all sorts of mischief.
You can do many different things. Open certain obstacles, but you can also shoot chandeliers down. You can also blind people, you can disarm people. It's a pretty cool gadget.
Abrak also tells me that we may very well be able to walk around Q Branch in between missions to inspect the MI6 Quartermaster's latest inventions for ourselves, a fantasy ingrained into every Bond fan's mind. There'll be no shortage of flexibility when it comes to the campaign's open areas then, with the Hitman pedigree shining through, just with the red tie swapped for a black tie aesthetic. But where front-footed combat has always felt like a fallback in the world of assassination, here it's presented as a necessity, especially in First Light's more guided encounters. Fast forward to the end of the demo's chess infiltration mission, following something presumably much more explosive than a checkmate, and Bond is behind the wheel of a vintage Aston Martin. It's a moment tailored specifically for that Bond fantasy, and even without getting to play it myself, I found myself exhilarated by the car chase that follows, even if it does slightly outstay its welcome. It's a long chase.
Hold tight.
It may not reach the breathtaking heights found in the non-stop chaos of Uncharted 4's famed Moroccan Jeep scene, but it does thrillingly move us to the chapter's next big action moment. Pursuing the runaway 009, James is taken to an airfield housing a fully armed militia. As he steps into the area, he's given the crucial license to kill, which allows him to unholster his firearm and let loose. IO doesn't want Bond to be able to act like a killing machine in every scenario, so deadly force will only be granted when the situation calls for it. The combat itself looks slick, but packing a punch, symbolic of 007 himself, a blunt force dressed in a sharp suit. He flicks shotguns up with his feet into his hands before unloading the cartridges, charges at enemies like a linebacker, sending them to the floor with a thud, and drills bullets into any nearby gas canisters to engulf as much of the base in flames as possible. It's an impressive sequence that further showcases a malleability in encounter design, both at deliberate and breakneck speeds. Bond is more nimble than the relatively stiff Agent 47 has ever been, able to chuck empty rifles at the heads of his enemies and quickly dash between cover in one smooth movement. In a later mission in which Bond is tasked with crashing a Kensington gala, even more creativity is on display, such as pool balls being lobbed from a table and into someone's skull, and doors being kicked in and cannoning into unsuspecting guards behind them. This promise of being able to combine James's raw power, nifty gadgets, and environments full of opportunity looks tremendously exciting. But back in Slovakia, this experimentation is perhaps best showcased once Bond boards the plane taking off from the aforementioned airfield. After fistfighting your way across the wing and down into the hull, you're handed the controls of the plane, allowing you to sharply bank it left or right. This throws enemies inside the aircraft off balance, but also turns the cargo into weapons. 2-ton crates slam into soldiers, presumably breaking over half the bones in their body. It's these one-off mechanics that help build the cinematic whole, making individual action scenes truly feel like big moments. It's reminiscent of the original Call of Duty Modern Warfare, its globe-trotting nature of course owing a debt to Bond, in a way that it grants you a distinct way to play for just one level, such as controlling an AC-130 gunship. It's moments like these that create missions that stick long in the memory. This stretch of car chase, gunfight and sky-high stunt work is breaking new ground for IO. A studio that has typically found joy in the quiet and methodical is having to shift gears considerably, flexing action-adventure muscles that are long-rested or in some instances not trained at all. Even the slick action of Kane and Lynch was shrouded in a morose cloud, with smiles coming at a premium. Here, the Danish developers have had to flick through the original pulpy fiction to find an altogether more swashbuckling tone.
The books were definitely the kind of the touchstone for us in terms of wanting to do our own. We wanted to have our take on it. We didn't, and this was again a really foundational thing. We did not want to synthesize and go, oh, we were going to cherry pick this from this and this from this. It was like, who is this character and how do we build him up to suit, the story that we want to tell.
This structure of blending the curated with the creative is reminiscent of last year's Indiana Jones and the Great Circle, somewhat of an irony considering Steven Spielberg owes much of his archaeologist creation to Bond. The Raiders of the Lost Ark director even wanted to helm a 007 movie before George Lucas pitched The Adventures of Indiana Smith to him. Without Indy, there'd be no Tomb Raider, and in turn, no Uncharted. While the team at IO is reluctant to pinpoint specific inspirations outside of the 007 canon, it wouldn't feel a stretch to imagine Nathan Drake being subbed in for the second half of James's Slovakian sojourn, as explosive red barrels and parachuteless freefalls punctuate the sequence. Hitman's level design has always been gameplay informed. The larger narratives were never what drove its many iconic maps. With First Light, IO has had to work a little differently, making sure that stories, both overarching and small scale, are constantly being woven in and out of Bond's actions. That necessitated a more collaborative approach from the get-go when it came to designing the content and flow of its missions.
All the levels started in a small group where we had level designers, we had art directors, and we had, narrative, and having your big story broken into segments which neatly fit into, obviously, levels. What's going on in this level, what are the themes we're dealing with, and having that character-driven approach to not only story, but to level design as well.
While it's far too early to say if that approach has been a complete success, the signs are very promising. From the glimpses of 2 missions we've seen, there seems to be a suitable mix of both spy play and action, all of which seems to drive forward a story, and it will be intriguing to see what the balance will end up looking like across the whole of what's described to me as a beefy First Light campaign. That lure of Hitman-like social stealth and Uncharted-scented set pieces is certainly exciting. It all feels very distinctly Bond. If there was anything above all else that I learned from my day in Denmark, it is that there's a distinct reverence for the legacy of 007 at IO, and the desire to make the first truly original game in the Spy's canon as authentic yet fresh as possible. A decade or so ago, there was a time when a cinematic game was thought of as something new and exciting. But now it feels like every single-player AAA venture is steeped in incredibly detailed cutscenes and narratives that elegantly weave in and out of gameplay. Creating something unseen in this genre is getting increasingly harder to achieve. Instead of treading that path, IO is looking to the source, both novels and films, and stamping its own brand of agent action onto it. The hallmarks are there, from small details like the scar Bond sports on his cheek as described in the books, to the louder, much more obvious nods, such as his range of Jaguar and Aston Martin cars. Its world and characters are dripping with sartorial style, dressed in fine tailoring and expensive Omega timepieces. This level of licensing could so easily feel superficial, but these items of luxury are so ingrained in the world of Ian Fleming's creation that it would feel even more hollow to be without them. Of course, no Bond story is complete without a villain, and very little has been revealed in regards to their identity at this point, or even how many of them we'll be dealing with. The only clue I've seen at this stage is a picture of a mysterious figure wearing an emotionless, eyes wide shut like golden mask. With most of James' foes leaning towards the neurotic as opposed to the erotic, I'll assume this is merely a passing reference, rather than a full-blown Kubrick crossover. Then there's the 007 sound. First Light is described as a very music-forward game by audio director Dominic Vega, and it certainly sounds that way. The score dips in and out in classic Bond fashion, stabbing scenes with sudden strings, but also blending them with jazz swing and synthesized beats that reflect both James's legacy and future. Composed by The Flight, who have had hands in the soundtracks for Horizon Forbidden West, Assassin's Creed Odyssey, and Alien Isolation, it appears to be using those classic Barry and Arnold refrains to great effect. Oh, and then there's the matter of a theme song, which, although not directly confirmed by IO, was very heavily hinted at to exist by Abrak and the team. It simply wouldn't be a Bond adventure without one, would it? As for who performed it, place your bets now. If you can't tell by now, I'm extremely excited by the prospect of 007 First Light. It's shaping up to be exactly what I thought and wanted it to be when IO first announced its partnership with the license. The Hitman DNA that I and so many others love so much is there, all the way down to the mission briefings presented in a very World of Assassination way, just with Moneypenny taking over Mike duties from Diana, but with that distinct Bond iconography that's kept the series so beloved for over 7 decades. While I'm pleased to see elements of Naughty Dog's industry-shaping series seeping in here, I'm even more glad to see that First Light isn't just Uncharted but Bond. IO Interactive has given us some of the most compelling, systematically engaging gameplay of the last decade, and to see that there's plenty of Hitman agency here is more than enticing. I'm left very hopeful, and while we remain in the dark as to what shape Denis Villeneuve's upcoming Bond film will take, First Light is looking like a very bright prospect for the future of Britain's most famous spying export. Got any burning questions about 007 First Light? Ask them in the comments below, and I'll do my best to answer them for you in the next few days. For more from First Light, check out the latest trailer, and for everything else, stick with IGN.
That's the car.
It's got too much of a head start. You need to cut some corners.
Careful what you wish for.